Okay, and we're live. I just want to open the chat here on the side so that I can see any messages coming through. Hold on one second. Oh, there's the chat. Okay, public chat. Carrie, it's so nice to have you here. I asked you previous if it's okay if I ask you, or if I just say Carrie instead of Dr. Carrie, and you said that's totally fine. So,
of course.
thank you so much for being here. So our topic is how to protect our mental health when the world feels overwhelming, and I think it's such a fitting topic right now and where the world is at, what we're going through. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for sparing an hour for us. I want to thank everyone for being here. Welcome to our Divergent discussion. My name is Carla. I'm a registered psychotherapist, trained psychologist, clinical lead at Caboose, and I'm currently doing my PhD. So I'm a PhD researcher at the moment. Caboose exists to create belonging, understanding, and support for neurodivergent people. At the heart of what we do are our neuro nuggets, short, practical guides that help you understand how your brain works and find ways to make work and life easier. They also help workplaces build genuinely inclusive spaces. So definitely go check those out. Our Divergent discussion is being recorded. This is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So there are also other ones that you can go and check out. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat. If they're relevant to the specific topic, I might ask them. Otherwise, I will ask them at the end. I just saw my hair. It's a little bit messy, so I'm so sorry about that. Okay, Carrie, I'm going to do a bio. Please stop me or add anything that you feel is relevant. You look lovely, by the way. I wanted to say this earlier,
thank
too.
you.
I really like the green. It brings out everything. It's really nice.
I made the mistake of taking my LinkedIn picture with this top, so now I feel like I never wear it because I think people would think I only have one top in the whole world.
This is why I wear black all the time. This is the same black, by the way. No, but I think even if you just had that one top, that's perfectly fine too. You know, like I was speaking, sorry, this is so random, but I was speaking to somebody else in a Divergent discussion, and they were saying that if something works, like let's say you like the feeling of the top, as neurodivergent individuals, it's so difficult for us to find these, like the material that actually is okay for us, that I just buy the same thing. So if I like this jersey, I've been looking for this specific jersey now, and they don't stock them anymore. So I've got actually a hole in it somewhere here. I was covered. So it's fine. I think buy more of those green shirts.
Yeah.
Okay, so Carrie, you're a neurodivergent researcher, which I absolutely love because I'm one of those too, and a consultant specializing in neuroinclusion and psychological safety in the workplace. Amazing. After completing your PhD in autism and neurodiversity studies, you taught at the University of Leeds, where you designed neuroinclusive teaching environments that encourages diverse modes of communication and participation. I really want to hear about this. You're the founder and the lead consultant at Neurodiversity CIC. Is that how you say it?
Neurodiversify, yeah. It always autocorrects whenever people... Don't worry.
Oh, sorry, Neurodiversify. And is it CIC or...
Yeah.
Okay. What does CIC stand for?
A community interest company. So it's a type of not-profit that's not a charity. So just a different structure.
Okay, awesome. Didn't know that. A neurodivergent-led organization that partners with workplaces to build genuinely inclusive cultures. Great. You bring together lived experience as an autistic woman with professional expertise to deliver impactful, data-driven change that values differences and challenges neuronorms. Amazing. I just want to ask about the university things that you did, the neuroinclusion at university. I know that you're bringing that into the workplaces too, but was it more difficult? This is maybe a bit of a political question, but was it more difficult to bring in neuroinclusion in academia or in workplaces? Or is there a difference?
Ooh, what an interesting question. I don't know if I could say which one was more challenging, but they were very different for sure. You have a different sort of control when you're in an academic environment. You're left very much to there's not a particular curriculum. You're building to an exam, but you have a lot of control over what you're teaching and how you teach it. So you had a lot of control in that respect, which I loved. And basically what I was doing was trying to make the sessions, we had come back to teaching after lockdown. And so there was a big focus on attendance. I wasn't so focused on attendance in the conventional way, in that if somebody was more comfortable attending virtually, or I knew that they were attending asynchronously, so, I know they were there but not in person, that for me is really valuable. And one of the things that I was trying to get my students to appreciate was, if you haven't managed to do the reading one of the weeks that you're here, to be honest, I kind of expect you to not be able to do the reading, all of the reading at some point, and I still want you to be able to come. I want you to be able to come if, let's be honest, this is a group of, it was first or second years. If you've had a heavy night the night before and you're not feeling tip-top, I'd rather you were here and, slightly participating or not participating in the conventional ways than just not coming. And so a lot of the pressure I was putting on was on what does it mean to be present and what does it mean to attend. And so I was very happy for people to email and say, I still want to come, but I haven't been able to do the reading. And what you find is actually maybe a few people, if you make it safe for them to do so, will tell you, God, we've had a lot of reading. I haven't done the reading. And actually, one time, a majority of them hadn't done the reading. And you realise, okay, I need to adapt what I'm teaching, because actually this is not an individualised thing. There's a lot going on. They've got a lot of assessments or assignments. Let's change what I'm teaching so it's actually fit for purpose and what it means to attend. I think there's a difference in that they have a real choice about whether they do attend. There's not the same choice in workplaces, so there's very much a different attitude. I don't know, they're very different for sure. I wouldn't be able to quantify which was easier or harder. You face such different things in either one, to be honest.
I love the way that you said it there, to quantify it. I think it's so refreshing, though, to hear that, like, you are not saying that you have to attend, you have to do the reading, and that's very different to a lot of academic faculties where you're supposed to be doing all your homework before you attend, and you feel like, for me as an ADHDer, I feel like I'm actually better when I don't prepare as much, because I feel like I'm more anxious if I over prepare. So if I do all the reading, I would be exhausted. So I actually prefer hearing it from a fresh perspective and then kind of using my strength.
I'm the exact opposite. So often I would feel I haven't prepared to the absolute nth degree, therefore I can't attend. So if somebody were to say to me, no, you're allowed to very much have thoughts in process. You're very much allowed to come and process. You don't need to come with fully formed thoughts. That would have been huge for me. So that's basically what I was trying to do. Not give people permission to just not do anything, but to say to people, I'd rather have you here with half a thought or, not quite sure, than feel you can't come because you're not coming in the right way, if that makes sense.
Nice. I would have loved you as a lecturer.
Oh.
Okay, so let's actually start with the questions that I do have for you. Many people are feeling overwhelmed at the moment, as we know, by the state of the world, what's going on in general. This is maybe a bit of a silly question, because we understand that there are a lot of things happening at the moment, but why do you think that this is such a heavy emotional load on our mental health, and specifically probably for neurodivergent individuals?
And I know what you mean, because to say out loud, there's a lot going on seems almost obvious, doesn't it? And the very sad thing is that I don't know if we've ever faced exactly what we're facing now as a world, but the underlying themes are not all new. The world has faced in some kind of shape or form kind of what we're dealing with. It does feel that it's kind of accelerated, but what we're facing with is not entirely new. But what is new is the way that we have unfiltered, unlimited access in very close proximity to everything that's going on in the world. Now, that's not entirely and completely a bad thing. There's definitely some advantages to having access to information really quickly, of course, but it's one factor in making it feel that bit more overwhelming for us. So we know, for example, some people have witnessed extreme violence in very close-up video footage that somebody might have taken on their mobile phone, and that might have not been consensual as well. So the way that a lot of social media is constructed, you could have just been scrolling through your own social media feed and been confronted with this extreme violence. And it's not like you've gone looking for it and you've had to search on some dark corner of the web, we really are being kind of confronted with it a lot more. And it is something to bear in mind, particularly with the algorithms. They favour this kind of engagement that gives you an intense emotional reaction, be that rage or be that fear. They are very much designed with that in mind. I think as well with AI in general, it's something I try not to talk about because we could go down a huge rabbit hole with this, but it is relevant here. Everything kind of feels turbocharged at the moment. Everything feels really urgent and like it's accelerating. It feels like everything is changing. You blink and things change and accelerate. So a lot of us, it puts us in this tentative position of being confronted with this information. We're also not sure if it's true or real or made up or actually happened as well, and what we can believe and where we should be getting our information from. But I think as well, there's this expectation that we consume this, whether we meant to or not, and then we just go back to normal life. We see or read about this and then we just go back to school or work. And for many of us, if we do work at home, for example, there's not a kind of delineation or a kind of psychological boundary between that. So you might be scrolling on your phone and then you're expected to go back to work. And for a lot of people, I think this puts us in a state of almost cognitive dissonance where we're supposed to proceed as normal, but the world is also kind of on fire. And in some ways, I think this hinders us from processing it, processing very reasonable reactions to what's happening in the world in the ways that we might ordinarily. So previously we might have dealt with them in a kind of collective way, or we might have spoken about them as a community. But this way that we're receiving information and dealing with it and not perhaps able to process it in the same way does make it feel, I think, very isolating, very individual, and then very overwhelming, like you mentioned.
And unsafe, right? Because it's like you open your phone, which is supposed to be your personal safe phone because you have a password on it, and then you're confronted with, like you said, something that you didn't choose. And straight after, like sometimes we work on our phones, straight after you have to go into work, and there's not this like little barrier of, okay, let's pause, reflect, compartmentalize, put that somewhere where it's out of our safety zone now, and then become feeling a little bit better. So that's actually very true. Okay, neurodivergent people experience stress, global stress and uncertainty differently. Would you agree or not? And what patterns do you tend to see here?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah. We've got 3 hours now.
Honestly, I could. I always try to say that, how somebody is likely to react to a situation or what their response to a certain stressor can't really be, anticipated in their neurotype. But I think there definitely are patterns, like we mentioned. So I think we can acknowledge that, for example, certain strands of privilege are going to be responding differently to perhaps if you are neurodivergent, disabled or marginalised. The conversations or what's happening in the world trickles down into conversations around work, education, healthcare, income, rights in a way that can feel very different. I think a lot of neurodivergent people know very clearly what it means to feel excluded or to feel overlooked by those systems that are supposed to be there to protect us and that we find out perhaps are not. And then we want to make sure even more so that nobody else feels that way. So there is a gap, however, between what we're consuming, our awareness of what's going on in the world, and what we can practically do about it. It doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about it, and it doesn't mean that we should be doing anything about it. But I think that gap between awareness and what we can and want to do is where there can be definitely a pattern of distress emerging, for sure. The other side of that is for neurodivergent people. Navigating the world on a good day can take a huge amount of energy for us once we take into account, sensory preferences, our masking, just the cognitive load anyway. So the capacity or the kind of the balancing act that we're doing with our nervous system anyway can sometimes make it a little bit more difficult if there is something that's, potentially is difficult for somebody to deal with that's not neurodivergent, that can be hugely dysregulating for somebody that's already dealing with a huge amount of things. So I think some people may process this differently. So I can probably draw from my own example rather than make any kind of huge generalizations. But I know for some people, you might process the information really, really deeply. So you're receiving it and then it kind of, your brain keeps returning to it. So you might keep thinking about it, or you might try to make those healthy boundaries about when and where you consume information. But then your brain keeps returning to it. And so you have got little control over, actually, I'm trying not to consume it, but I'm keep returning to these topics of conversation. For other people, just that chronic uncertainty. When I say other people, I mean me. I'm outing myself here completely. This chronic uncertainty that, as I said, there's that gap between what we know of and what we can do, is really dysregulating. It feels unpredictable in a way that we could never have control over. It's not something that we could feasibly ever have control over. And so that structure and that stability that many people rely on to manage their daily life is gone. And again, is adding to the mental load. That's a cup that is already very, very full is going to just overflow. So I don't think there's one particular way or a particular way somebody might react because of a particular neurotype, but at the same time I think there's definitely strands or patterns that we can see through that, depending on kind of energy, capacity, processing styles, those sorts of things.
And you touched on the first part there, on that double empathy, like feeling like you're highly empathic and then also feeling another person's struggles that they go through. And then that kind of, it's a little bit of a cycle, because I know for myself, I don't really see neurodivergent people and neurotypical as these like completely two different camps. I do think that we're divergent in our own ways, and some people are just, you know, falling more into but this is a personal belief, so I should probably not go on that too much. But I do think though that I tend to personally share my time more with neurodivergent individuals. So people that do hyperfixate on news or hyperfixate on details, and closing that loop, wanting to closing that loop of like, this is information, how do we solve it? This is information, how do we solve it? And if you can't, and you're constantly engaging with other individuals that are also hypersensitive to these things, I think it does escalate that. So keeping that in mind is maybe a good thing. Just saying that, you know, sometimes it's good out of sight, out of mind to go into that more, and use some of your characteristics to your advantage. I know as an ADHDer, I don't look at news when I'm feeling overwhelmed, because it will make me feel just way too hypersensitive again. So I'm like, okay, you know what, I don't want to know what's going on at the moment.
And that's completely fair, isn't it? And I think this is probably something we'll come back to, but you mentioned you socialise with lots of different neurodivergent people where you want to close this loop. But this is not a loop that can be closed. So then what do you do? It's really, really difficult, isn't it, to set those boundaries around it when you can't. There's not an end. There's not a finish unless you make there be one.
Yeah. So maybe what we can control is just what we do that's nice in the day, and give ourselves space for that. Like, okay, so every day I'm going to do an hour of walking without my phone, without news, without opening any of the social media platforms, so that I can just get away from all of it. Or listen to Neuro Nuggets. You know, those are really nice. Like, that was quite positive. Okay, so how does constant exposure to news, we were just talking about this, but social media and global events affect our nervous system over time? You did mention nervous system a few times, and I think this is important to note.
It's like this was planned, and I had an idea of what might be coming next.
Well done. You did really well.
But it's like we said at the beginning, this is unprecedented in the fact that we were never supposed to, I don't know, I wouldn't perhaps say that, but we have never before had the amount, the volume and the immediacy of the information that we are receiving near constantly as we have right now. And so repeatedly, as I mentioned, you might put control in one place about, I'm only going to consume this media then, or I'm going to go for a mental health walk. But then what if on your mental health walk all you can think about is what's been going on, and you keep returning to these images? And, you know, repeatedly encountering this distressing information, whether it is you reading it or whether you continue to think about it, can still trigger the same kind of psychological responses in us as if a physical danger were present. So the brain's not so great at distinguishing between, is that a predator, is that real danger, or is that something that I've kind of read and internalized, is it what's going on with this danger? So even if we are sitting safely at home, we ourselves are safe, the body can still react as though there's something urgent or very, very dangerous happening. So if we keep consistently being exposed to these, it's over time the body is just consistently responding as though there were a threat, and it can keep your body in that kind of fight, flight. There's many different, isn't there? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop, all those different stress and threat responses. Rather than allowing yourself to return into that calmer state, you can find yourself perhaps more and more just in that response rather than a kind of more relaxed. So it doesn't, like we were saying, really have a natural resolution. So if we were to go back in time to when this fight or flight had it was a predator we were facing or something like that, our nervous system would kind of work in a cycle. So you'd have that threat, you'd have the response, and then you'd have that recovery. But when we're exposed to these distressing events which have no resolution, like we were saying, there's no real cycle of recovery. There's no real cycle or indicator or prompt for your body to go back into that safe mode of recovery and complete that cycle. So we're kind of left carrying that unresolved stress. And so for neurodivergent people, like we've mentioned, this really does become amplified. So many of us, like we said, really do process that information very deeply. We notice patterns, and then we might also, for myself, this is really true. So I'll read something, but I'll be processing it perhaps days later when I make a connection, or we hold on to details and we're making those connections. So this can be a real strength, but this can also be the thing that ends up distressing us as well. So there's a whole host of things where, as I say, we're not able to complete that cycle, and it's not quite as simple as, just walking away from it. We need to think about the ongoing impact that it continues to have on our body, for sure.
And what if now, so I know that for myself it's quite easy to just not look at news, but a lot of my autistic friends are like, no, they want to know what's going on, they want to be on top of it. Also just, in general, like we want to know what's going to happen with some of our investments, like we don't know, we need to be kind of informed about what's going on at the moment and what could happen. So what would you say is a good way to balance well-being and awareness for individuals that do want to stay in touch with what's going on social media and the news?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first step is acknowledging that a lot of us might feel quite guilty for stepping away. So for those people that are going through those awful events, stepping away, taking a break, choosing not to engage with it is not a privilege they have. And for many of us, being an ally and advocate, you feel like you want to meet other people where they're at. And so you feel this intense guilt. If I step away, it means I don't care, which is not true at all. And so one of the important points that I try to tell people often is that you are not alone. You're not alone in how you're feeling, even though, as we mentioned, the way we consume media can be incredibly isolating and it feels very individual. You're not alone. Whether you engage in community in the conventional ways, or whether you turn to friends and family, or you have a community with shared interests, or whether you have a more unconventional community that perhaps you don't even know you're part of, but it just kind of exists because you have shared interest. You alone are not responsible for, even if you do want to take action, you're not responsible. And there's very few things in the world that require our acute attention to detail, whereby you need to be constantly available minute by minute, second by second, to know what's going on in the world. There are, of course, some exceptions to that, but for us, generally, there are very, very few reasons that you would need to be that available and that aware of what's going on in the world. And like I said, you're not alone. So if you are wanting to do something or wanting to stay aware, if you step away, things don't stop. There are people that are equally committed who will also be staying aware. I think as well, for me, who's somebody who, if I want to lean into community, but at the same time, socialising takes a little bit of a toll on me energy-wise. I've often wondered, well, what does that mean if I want to exist as part of a community, but I want to stay aware? What do I do? And I find a lot of solidarity in more asynchronous forms of community. So maybe I'm writing and creating resources and putting them out there for people to consume. Maybe I'm reading what somebody has written previously. And I find that really, really useful. So I would say, and I think we'll probably come on to this a little bit later, but creating those healthy boundaries around it, but also acknowledging that you might feel guilty for stepping away, that you're not committed or you're somehow less committed. But being aware, we need to assess what is the level of awareness that I can have that doesn't take a toll on my mental and physical health. So I always kind of, one of the phrases I encounter as a little bit of an aside in workplaces is I try to move us beyond that vague language. When somebody says, oh, just do your best. And I say to people, do you know your best is what you can do without taking a mental or physical toll on you? It's not running yourself and your battery and your energy completely empty. And this is equally true for asking ourselves, what level of awareness do I want to have? So me personally, I want to have a level of awareness that is sustainable for me. That means that if I consume media today, I could then consume some tomorrow. Not one that if I consume and exhaust myself today, I'm too depleted to look or read at anything tomorrow. And so I think that's a really important question to ask of ourselves. What level of awareness allows me to stay engaged in what's going on in the world, but also be able to show up in my life, for my friends, for my family, for my work, for all the things that are important to me in the way I want to. And then we can begin to have conversations around what that looks like and how we do that in a healthy way.
I really like that. I like that you said you brought up something that I deal with in my own life, but a lot of my clients too, where if we are told, oh, you just got to do your best or give 100%. And it's like, okay, but my 100% is like 100%. And then I'm totally exhausted for,
Right.
2 days after that, because I'm going to give everything I have. And I usually tell my clients or suggest to my clients, maybe give your 50% and see if it's good enough, because it usually is. And then you still have a bit of capacity for yourself, which is you're the most important person in your own life, which we tend to forget. Jack was also saying here, I agree, I feel guilty because I have the privilege of being able to step away. And that's, I think a lot of us feel like that, because it's like, okay, everything is going on in the world. This actually leads into one of my next questions is, what are some of the signs that someone might, that that if somebody might be reaching that emotional fatigue or mental fatigue or emotional overwhelm from what's happening around them?
It's difficult because it builds gradually. And when I say this, I want to make it really clear, I struggle with this myself. And so one of the things I recently put on my wall, which is hugely embarrassing, but I talk about it more, and the more that I say it's embarrassing, people seem to be curious about it. But it's these prompts that say to me, this is what it feels like when I'm beginning to get overwhelmed, exhausted, I'm approaching burnout, these sorts of things. And every time it happens, it takes me by surprise. But I think it's this slow build. It's like if you put a frog in boiling water, isn't it? That's the saying, they don't notice. So it's very difficult, because I think lots of people, particularly neurodivergent people, are incredibly resilient, and we balance a lot anyway. A lot of us are existing in, a state of survival anyway. So to notice those kind of subtle shifts is difficult, but important. And they might show up in a lot of different ways. So physically, and this is going to be different for everybody, I'm going to miss some, of course, this is really just ways it could show up. But physically, it could be difficulty sleeping. It could be sleeping more. It could be you constantly feel tense, you've got these headaches, you feel exhausted, a sense that your body never fully relaxes. Like we mentioned, your body hasn't got that opportunity to close the cycle and get rid of that adrenaline. Your body never really feels relaxed. Some people might notice kind of breathing feeling shallow, kind of those what we might associate with anxiety, but they look more long term. Anything where you just kind of feel on edge. Nothing immediate has happened, but you can't seem to shake this kind of physical feeling. Then cognitively, it might affect focus, it might affect decision making. For me, it's concentration and conversation. I always say that. So I can't concentrate on the things I want to do, but I can't hold a conversation with somebody else either. Those are my particular prompts. You might feel mentally foggy. You might notice you're struggling to switch your attention, if that's something you're able to. But if you're somebody that can switch easily, you might be struggling to hold focus. And for neurodivergent people in particular, you might notice that information is looping around, like we mentioned. So you're struggling to not think about these things, you're struggling to switch off or think about anything else. And then emotionally, you might think that your responses to what you're consuming are gradually becoming stronger and stronger. this is very difficult because I do feel like there's a lot going on in the world that I do feel very strongly around. And I very much don't ever want to disqualify anybody that's feeling like that, because I think these feelings, and definitely a ramping up of feelings, is completely valid. And I think historically, neurodivergent people, women and non-binary people often have your feelings dismissed. So I want to be very careful in how I say that that's not this. But if you know in yourself that you are feeling differently, you're feeling strongly, or you feel that things are just kind of overwhelming in a way that you feel more helpless and more hopeless, that kind of chronic feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, then that I think is a trigger as well. For many people, as I say, it can go in the exact opposite direction. So it might be actually that it's not that your feelings are more intense, it's that actually you feel incredibly numb to everything, and you feel like nothing really matters, and that you can't care about the things that you used to care about. All of these things, I think, come from knowing yourself. You know yourself better than anyone. And if you feel like there's a change in how you feel, that's a really good indicator for us to be having a little look at, where we're expending our energy, what feels particularly draining, and the things that you might typically do. So for myself, if I'm getting myself in a real funk about what's going on in the world, I would turn to friends and I would turn to family and those sorts of people. The frustrating thing is, the thing that I need to get me out of the funk with the world being on fire itself becomes more exhausting as well. So we need to take that into account, that the things that we might use to pick ourselves up also take more time to recover from as well. And so it can feel very confusing to know where this exhaustion is coming from. If you're feeling like, well, I just went out with friends and I feel so exhausted. If we dig a little deeper, it might be that actually we're feeling very overwhelmed in this very, very chronic way.
Yeah, and it's needed to see people sometimes, and then you're not having the energy to do so. So it is a bit of a catch-22 too. I think once when you were talking about this, it felt like you were talking to me pre-diagnosis. Like, that's how I felt before my diagnosis. I was like, where do I fit in? I feel uneasy. I feel on edge all the time. And I think that accepting, so that could be a sign for me personally. It's like, if I feel that familiar feeling that I had when I was pre-diagnosis, then I know that something's up and I need to maybe just sit with it for a while to determine. I think a change. I think if it's a change in your daily habits, daily routines, and it's not a change that you want to, or that you feel like you can sustain, so not a positive, like, you're starting a new hobby, then I think it's something to look at. I wanted to ask about, how do we give this emotional load back to where it should go to, right? Because I think without feeling guilty about it, but I'm a therapist and I'm on a daily basis. I have like 7 or 8 clients that I see, and I'm very close with my clients, but I have to kind of say, okay, this is their emotional load to carry. I can't, because then I will, if I carry everybody's emotional load, which we're very good at as neurodivergent individuals, that's why we're often therapists, right? Is to really feel empathic and share that moment with the individual, but we have to be able to distance ourselves so that we can have some space for ourselves. How do we do that with the world, do you think? Like, with what's going on at the moment?
It's tricky, right? Because if we think, okay, I want to return that to sender, but who is that? Whose emotional load are we carrying? Like you mentioned, a lot of particularly neurodivergent people are so highly aware of, what's going on in the world, how other people might be feeling, and it's very difficult. I hesitate to say that, when people say you have a strong sense of justice, as I say, I don't think it's quite that. I think it's ingrained with a lot of different things, that we're highly empathic, highly aware, and it's really difficult because we feel almost personally that we have to carry all of this weight on our shoulders. And when you can see what's going on around you, you often feel like, if not me, then who? But I know that that's not true. And so so when I mentioned there was that gap between awareness and what we could practically do, knowing what you are practically able to influence within your life. So what is your emotional responsibility here, and what can you practically do about it? And you mentioned it briefly earlier about leaning into your strengths. So if you're able to, and a lot of this conversation relies on you knowing yourself well, I guess, and you do knowing yourself well, so knowing when you're approaching burnout or overwhelm, but knowing what your strengths are and what you can contribute. And if it exceeds what you are able to do very well, there's a very good chance that it's not for you to carry. And this links to what we were saying earlier about you're not alone in that respect. And that if everybody is contributing in a way that works with their strengths, then you've got a really full and diverse picture, which is excellent. If you are struggling to know what you're good at, ask anybody that is around you, your friends, your family. I bet they will tell you things that you didn't even realise you were good at. So I highly encourage you to do that as well. But being able to lean into your strengths means that it is then sustainable for you as well. And recognising, actually, there is nothing I can do in this situation. Doesn't mean that it's easy. That can feel very difficult to accept that there's nothing you can do. But when there is something you can do, you can go with your energy and recognising what is yours to hold and what isn't. And I think if we're able to, and the thing I find very hard is I find it difficult to know what exactly I'm feeling, because a lot of the things are blended together a lot. A lot of it, I think, is just grief at the state of the world. And like I said earlier, the systems that I thought were out to protect us all are just failing. There's a lot of grief, there's a lot of anger. Being able to decide how you feel about something and what you feel, if anything, you can do about that is a real strength. I think that's one of the hardest things, though, to determine how we're feeling about something when, you know, there is so much going on and not an awful lot we can do. There is some things we can do, but what we can do in the face of this kind of global crisis is a little bit more limited. Leading with our strengths, leading with our community, whatever that looks like, and recognising maybe what we're feeling will help us kind of tailor our response to it.
Yeah, I really like that. And also just the distrust that we're feeling towards everything. Like you said, we don't know what's real, what's not real. And knowing that we can't go into different countries to go and help out. Like I can't just leave Portugal now and go and help another, population because I believe in their cause. But what I'm good at is listening to, well, I think I am. I hope I am, because
you absolutely are.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I needed that. Thanks, Gary. No, but like listening and being there for somebody, like that's what I pride myself in. And I think that's what people would say. So if I can just be there for one other individual, that's already making a difference, I think. So that's awesome. We do have some amazing questions here. So I want to try and get through some of the questions that I have, and then let's go over to the questions.
Yeah, lovely.
Because we have so many questions. Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to ask you quick questions in a row. Boundaries. How can we put in boundaries that are healthy? If you could just name like a few things that you think could help.
Yeah. And this again is very much do as I say, not as I do, because these are very much for me as well. When you said you don't consume media, I can't remember what you said at a certain time. I thought immediately you are far more disciplined than me because I'm terrible. But it is
way
easier
more
said than done.
ADHD than you. That's maybe right.
So there's a few things that I found help for me. So the first is switching off notifications for kind of news apps or media things. So I can choose when I engage. I don't get pulled back in. Scrolling, if I could tell anyone to stop scrolling, if I could tell myself to stop scrolling, that would be fantastic, but I can't. So instead what I do is create kind of designated times where that's okay. I think there's some value in that as well. You definitely get different or diverse viewpoints from that sort of social media, but we've got to be aware of what the algorithm is feeding us. So I give myself set times to do that, as a defined begin and critically an end point. And I give myself it's kind of like an off ramp. So I finish, but I also have something that I'm doing to kind of calm my nervous system back down. So I kind of have it. So it might be that I finish consuming that media and then I go and get a cup of tea. And that is me saying to my body and my mind, you are done with that media now and we're going to move on to the next task. It also means I don't consume it first thing in the morning or late at night, but I cannot trust myself and my muscle memory. I'll go to check the time and I'll be scrolling before I know it. So I leave my phone in a different room. So it shouldn't go in the bedroom. It does, but I try not to put it in the bedroom. So otherwise I'll just wake up and that will be the first thing. And it can set the mood for the whole day, can't it? I also try to curate my feed with creators that give me a balance. Maybe that's a balance of perspective, so it's different people that are going to give me different takes on it, but I trust their input, but they give me kind of different perspectives on what's going on. Maybe I've got some creators that are keeping me up to date and informed, but some that are kind of light relief. There's plenty of dog videos and silly, funny things on my feed as well. Basically anything where you've got more control over the media you're consuming and you're leaving less to chance with the algorithm is always a good thing. Sometimes as well, I find it useful to change the format of what I'm receiving. So it might be that rather than consuming short form, you actually go and receive some kind of longer form things where they're balanced and they're thoughtful and they're putting things back into context. Or maybe it's exactly the inverse, you're reading and you want to shift up the sort of content that you're receiving. And creating those habits around, I think that's the most powerful thing for me. Creating the habit that means I have finished, and telling your mind and your body the same thing, I have finished, so then I can move on, has been really useful.
Those are awesome. And having that buffer, I think it's so important to say, okay, well, now I'm going to have a tea and it's going to like calm my nervous system again. I have also categories in Instagram because I love transcendent emotions. So for me, like any kama mutta or awe-inspired emotions, so like, you know, like musical awe, listening to a grand orchestra, or kama mutta where you watch the dog videos, or somebody that's just come home from a long trip away or something. Those are amazing. So if I do scroll, I don't scroll a lot actually, which is really good. I think I've become feeling guilty for not working. So my guilt cycle actually helps me. My guilt tripping helps me. But when I do scroll and there's something negative, I'm like, no, let me go into my categories of awe-inspired videos that I've saved. So it's like everybody playing like one Nirvana song, like there was like 1,000 musicians playing one Nirvana song. I was like, oh, this is amazing.
I love that stuff.
Yeah,
it's like a religious experience, isn't it? But I think what you mentioned there is it's very difficult to just not do something, but it's easier to catch yourself doing something and then do something else rather than say, oh, I'm scrolling, I should stop. That's quite difficult. But if you know yourself scrolling and say, let me scroll something else that I know is going to make me feel good, it's easier to replace than just stop, isn't it?
Yeah, finding those fixations that are good for us. Okay, I'm gonna quickly go to the next one because I want to get to the questions. What about when we're already feeling overwhelmed? What are some simple ways that can regulate our nervous system and find some steadiness again? I think, like you've mentioned a little bit with the buffer, but are there other ways that you can mention?
Yeah, and this is deeply personal. So I'll say what is useful for me and in the hopes that it might be useful for someone else, but in recognition that it won't be the same for everybody. So the first thing I mentioned, sometimes I struggle to know how I'm feeling, or I struggle to know if I'm reaching a certain point of exhaustion. So I try to engage my body first. So get back into my body. Okay, what am I feeling? Is there a chance I'm hungry, thirsty, have any sort of bodily needs at all, and engage in that way? And I think that helps our nervous system as well. So our nervous system responds quite well to those physical cues, and then we'll be able to calm itself in that way. So things I like running. That's not everyone's cup of tea, and also is not that easy if you're in the middle of the day. Like, hang on, stop everything. Sorry, I can't come to the meeting. I'm off out for a run. Doesn't work. So anything that's going to ground you in your body, that might even just be taking it slow. Like I said, might be stepping outside, having a cup of tea, making sure that you've honoured your bodily needs. Really, really important. I think then social connection matters. And as I mentioned, for me, social connection is equally something that takes a toll on me. So when I say that, I don't mean even just in the conventional socializing way, but anything that makes you feel like you're part of something rather than individualized. Like Carla, you mentioned you're listening to those 1,000 musicians playing that song. Anything that makes you realize you're part of more than just you is really, really important. So it can be asynchronous. It can be anything that makes you realize that you are not alone and kind of break through that feeling of isolation. And anything.
Caboose is groups. I mean, you can maybe join in one of the hangouts where we share a lot of tips and strategies and just being with somebody.
Yeah, and any micro pauses you can get yourself away from information, or any cues you can set yourself. So a lot of apps will allow you, if you have been on an app for a certain amount of time, to set a kind of cue because you've been on there for that amount of time, you had that amount of screen time, or any micro pauses you can get. So yeah, big up the neuro nuggets if you can get a little micro pause. And as I say, rather replace something than avoid doing it is a little bit easier. But anything that's going to give you, we were saying before I came, for me, it's important to move from passive consumption, so just reading, consuming, to actively engaging with people. So thank you very much for having me, because this is hugely useful for me. But this is the sort of thing I would do, is create resources or talk to people rather than just consuming it. And immediately I feel a ton better. I feel less alone. I feel more hopeful. I feel more engaged. And that's really, really useful for me. Having a cue to be like, hold on, this is my time to move from just consuming to then maybe engaging in some kind of way.
There's a really cute app called Focus Friend. It's a little, what is it, a bean or something, where you add it. It's so cute. I would highly recommend downloading it. And it like sews, is that the word? Sews socks. So you switch it on and then no other apps go through. So you're paused from any other apps. And it just like sews little socks, and then you get money so that you can make your little house. It's kind of like Sims, where you can create like things in your house and buy things. I love it because it's this like calming music in the background, and I'm like, yes, buddy. Yes, you can name him. Like Bilbo's mine, I think.
There's that visual, like,
yes.
All these little socks. I don't know what you earn, but like all these socks are little trinkets. You're like, that's all the time I focused. Look how well I did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're just like big kids, really.
We're like Tamagotchis, aren't we, at this point?
Yeah. Oh my god, I used to love Tamagotchi. Anyways, okay, so I'm gonna skip this one about the regulating our nervous system and then becoming more compassionate, because I think that we've already spoken about how do we stay compassionate and engage with the world without becoming exhausted, emotionally exhausted. We've covered that. So I want to ask you about, if somebody is listening today here and they're just feeling like everything is just too much, what's one small thing that they can do to protect their mental health this week?
The first thing I would say is any of these things I would say are preventative. So if you already feel that the world is too much and you do feel you're approaching a point of crisis, I would wholeheartedly say please do seek medical, personalised professional support. That, anything that we say here doesn't forego seeking the support that you do need. So if you're already at a point of crisis, obviously please do reach out. So these are more kind of preventative to help us not reach that point of crisis. But one thing, there's many, many things we could do, but one thing that I think is really, really important, and when everything feels urgent and everything is on fire, it feels almost luxurious or frivolous, but to hold space and create structure for hope is really, really important. So to be able to remember what it is that we're working for, what is it that we're aiming for, what is it that's good in the world. That's what I mentioned. Sometimes one of the things I notice for myself that I was beginning to get overwhelmed is I am an optimist by nature, and I found I was losing touch with what good even meant anymore. What was it? What was good in the world? And I was kind of losing touch with that. And so to replace or to return ourselves to a state of hope, to be able to say, particularly in what we do, what is the change I'm wanting to create in the world? What is it I'm responsible for? What do I want the world to look like in 5, 10, 30 years? Who do I want to be surrounded by? What sort of work do I want to do? Is really, really important to be putting that energy back out into the world. Other people will meet you there. If you want to create a change, you've got to first imagine it, which I know sounds a bit woo-woo when everything is urgent and there's so much that needs doing. But it's really important. It's really important.
Yeah, I love that. Like when you were talking, I was just envisioning like a soft cloud that I could go and sit in. I think also just like playing with kids, like going outside, going into nature and just like playing in the dirt and stuff, to be like when I really want some hope back into my life, I want to bring in hope back into my life, I just go outside here. I live like really close to the ocean, and there's always like some of the neighborhood kids, they're just like playing and creating like little sheds, and I'm like, yeah, let me go into that, bring my dog out, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm part of life again, and I'm not so
completely
consumed in my phone or on TV or whatever. You've also contributed to our Neuro Nuggets. Thank you so much for that. What made you want to create content for it?
For me, I'm always very focused on the impact something that I do will have. And it's the entire community and, the entire ecosystem that exists behind this. So Caboose, the people that work there, what they're trying to do, the ethos, the attitude of collaboration and inclusion. I know I'm contributing to something that's going to have a real change. The fact that it's neurodivergent led, neurodivergent majority, I know it's having a real impact. Whatever the opposite of tokenistic is, that's it. And it makes you want to contribute and sit amongst all these other fantastic creators as well. I'm just very proud to be part of it, because I know it's having a change, and it's what I would have wanted to have if it was available years ago. That's how I know that it's important and that it's doing something really, really cool.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think that's the same thing for me, as that's why I'm contributing so much for Caboose as well. It's something that I wish I had when pre-diagnosis, like somewhere where I was like, oh, wait, I'm not the only one going through all of this, and I'm not just a perfectionist and hypersensitive and blah blah blah. Okay, last question from me, and then we're gonna go over to the audience. How do you think microlearning helps neurodivergent brains compared to long workshops or long form? When I say it, I'm like long workshops.
Long.
So, yeah, I kind of prompted you there.
No, and I mean, it keys into why I wanted to work with Caboose as well, because I do think there's real value in this. So one of the things, the main thing that we do at Neurodiversify is working with workplaces. And so in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, how do we reach the individuals who perhaps their workplace hasn't reached out to work with a neuro-inclusion consultant? It's not their fault, is it? And arguably the people that need the support the most are working at the organisations where perhaps their workplace might not reach out for that kind of consultation or support. How do we reach those individuals as well? So the one thing for me is that it's that very individual basis. I think more support, more resources that are not gatekept behind diagnosis is really, really important. But that's not the answer to the question. I've gone off on a little tangent, trust me. For me, it's the momentum. So is it that, like you said, you're trying to replace scrolling with something else? You can learn at your own rate. Is it that you really want to deep dive, in which case you can absolutely binge a whole series, you can go back to back to back, you can hyper focus on that? Is it that your attention works best when you do flip between different subjects? I think with the way that the micro learning is set up, it gives you that flexibility to be able to engage with it in the way that you want to engage with it. And the less you're trying to force yourself to focus or learn in a way that might work for someone else, and the more you're able to tailor it for yourself, the more the information is going to stick, the more you're going to return to it, and it's actually going to work and is going to be a long-term thing that you can commit to.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I wouldn't be able to just sit in hours of anything. Like I lose focus within a few seconds. So even with micro learning, I have to sometimes pause, skip, go back, double speed,
Yeah.
like, and I think it's great that we have the different types of learning nowadays, which is great. Carrie, thank you so much. I'm gonna go over to the audience questions. There was one comment here: the overwhelm that is occurring in the world has led to the sort of existential malice and even apathy in myself and many people in my life. One of the only things that I found to ease those feelings is being out in the natural world. Oh, nice. We did say that the other one of the things where my body, mind, and environment are at an equilibrium. Those are really a lot of big words, Jack. I'm very happy that I was able to maybe pronounce most of them, but sometimes I can't.
I wholeheartedly agree with that though. And I know you mentioned, I can't remember if it was before we started recording or now, that water is really important for you. You live not too far from the coast. And for me, it's forests. So I love being in nature with my dogs, and bird song particularly I found really, really grounding. Anything that I can just kind of, do you know when you go in those places and you think, I could be anywhere in the world right now? That sort of thing is really important for me. Out with my dogs, in nature, is really grounding. And I mean, thank you for, do you say it was Jack that shared that? Thank you for sharing, Jack. I think it's not just you. That apathy, I think, is more difficult sometimes to deal with, isn't it? Because it can be really scary, especially for people that care so deeply. To then feel kind of apathetic can be scary sometimes, but you're not alone. And hopefully some of what we've mentioned here today is helpful in some respect, for sure.
Yeah, and find the people that are similar to you in these groups. And I think also with the apathy, for me, it's sometimes like I feel so much that I have to switch it off. That it can be scary, but it can also be misleading, because people are like, oh, Carla doesn't care. No, I do care. That's why I can't open my phone that much. That's why I'm not as informed about, whatever is going on in the world, because I don't, because it's making me anxious. Look, I'm scratching.
Yeah.
Even just saying that. Okay, so let's go to Jenna. What is something we can do with it? I know that acknowledging is the first step. I have been trying to notice what that feeling is and where to put it. Am I going about this the right way? I'm not sure which part this was. What is something?
I wonder if that came when we were saying something specific. Maybe we were talking about something specific.
Yeah, maybe the overwhelm.
Maybe, yeah. So
Yeah.
was the question? Sorry.
Sorry, I was reading Jack's comment here. It's a bead. Yes, the bead. That's the app that I was talking about. It's a Bilbo the bead. So Jenna was saying what is something that we can do with it? I think maybe that overwhelm. I know that acknowledging is the first step. I've been trying to notice what that feeling is and where to put it. Am I going about this the right way? I think being aware of it is, the overwhelm. She was saying this now.
Yeah, okay. And where to put it, like, okay, I recognise that this is, like we were saying, that this is not mine to carry. Okay, cool. What do I do with it? And I think that's really important you're most of the way there to acknowledge it and to acknowledge that it's not yours. To acknowledge that it's okay to put that down as well, I think is a really important part. So acknowledging that, yes, I care, and me taking a pause and stepping away is okay, and I'm allowed to recognise my privilege that I have in stepping away, but I'm also allowed to prioritise my nervous system. Those things are okay. I think what I always try to do is I'm aware of my energy levels when they are depleted. I'm less aware of my energy levels when I feel really, really good. So I try to have, so much of this is kind of having a self-awareness, which I struggle with as well, so you're not alone. But knowing what makes us feel good is knowing as well as what drains us. I think a lot of us are really good at knowing what drains us, but what also brings us energy, and that will be really good. But also trying not to... So I often find kind of productivity norms creeping into my rest. So if I'm very busy and then I think, right, okay, I've consumed a lot of media, I need to have a rest. How do I rest well? I'm so busy and I need to take a moment away. How do I make sure I make the best use of this rest? But I think just giving yourself the space and the grace to rest, because you've not earned it, you don't earn it, you just get it, to make sure that whatever you're doing is sustainable, and doing that in a way that's enjoyable for you, that's going to be restorative for you.
And also, like, I just want to jump in there quickly, because a lot of my clients would say, yeah, but I don't like to rest. I don't like it when, when I do nothing. And we do need to close that loop. So for me, it is to do something that's fun, that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. And it's finished. Like a tea ritual, I do. I'm a little bit obsessed about teas. It's funny that you said that.
I love that. We would get on very, very well. We could have many tea rituals.
It's probably going to be for 2 weeks, Gary. Then I'm going to get a new ritual.
We need many more conversations over a tea ritual. But no, you're right. There are so many different ways to rest. I don't think I do well doing nothing. I can't honestly think I've done nothing any time in my life, but that's a conversation for another day. Yeah. But there's many different ways to rest. Yeah. And resting your body when it's your mind that's tired is not going to do any help. So recognising in what way you feel tired so that you can tailor the sort of rest that you need is really important.
Yeah. We have 2 minutes left. I don't think we have time more for questions, but I think let's just quickly go through this, and then I'm going to do an end wrap up quickly. The state of the world and the grief associated with the piles on top of the intergenerational trauma and grief we all have, to a certain extent. So many layers of complexity. That's very true. This is awesome comments.
It's really nice when people take something I say and then say it better. I absolutely love this.
I'm like, Jack, can you be my therapist, please? I love all of these, the way that you're saying things. What has helped you increase your awareness of yourself, your energy levels and capacity? So he says he's going to send an invoice. I don't think we have the time here, but he's also asking about, like, I'm similar to you, Carrie, and I often don't notice. So maybe just a quick note on how to increase your self-awareness. And then I'll do a wrap-up.
So what's the question? So how do you get to know yourself more?
Yeah, how to increase your awareness of yourself and your energy levels and your capacity.
So one of the things that me and my fantastic friend were talking about is, have you ever heard of an energy audit? So you don't know what you've done in the day, but you're exhausted, and you also didn't get done what you set out to do, and you just think, I haven't done anything that I've done, but I'm exhausted. So running through what you've actually done in a day, and I bet you've done 100 different things. Having an awareness of what you actually have done, having an awareness of how long a task takes you think takes you, but how long it actually takes you, all these sorts of things. Also doing an energy audit when you feel fantastic and you don't feel like you need to do said energy audit. So having an idea of what you actually get up to in a day, how you feel at the end of the day. And I know this is me being a researcher, going to like a data gathering phase first, because if you ask me how I feel or what I'm feeling in any given moment in these kind of big, really difficult, vague ways, I have no idea. But if I'm able to look at a list and say I've done X, Y, Z, and this correlates because every day I do this particular thing, I'm exhausted at the end of the day, or every day that I start my day in this way, I feel fantastic at the end, that's really useful. So is it really boring to say gather the data first rather than be vague? But gather it in a really wide data set, so when you feel fantastic and when you feel depleted as well, and everything in between, and that will be a really good starting point for you.
I also think that remembering that some of the things that we love can also exhaust us. I think sometimes we're so hyperfixated, like, you know, we become so obsessed with things that we don't notice that we're not taking breaks, like even from the screen, from researching. I want to thank everybody for the amazing questions. I want to thank Carrie for answering them so well and just sharing your knowledge and just being here for the hour. I absolutely loved it.
It's been a privilege. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Awesome. And then also just before we go, I would love to say thank you for the amazing questions, by the way. Those were great. This is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. So take affirmative action by creating a NeuroNugget account this week for free premium access until the 31st of March. So you can go ahead and see more of Carrie. I'm also there. I do a few nuggets. I need to add Jack's way of communicating now and add some of these bigger words. I've never been good with big words. At least I could say big words in other languages. This is a reminder to, well, not that many, reminder to our audience that we have a range of Divergent discussions coming up. You can find all of the details in the Caboose app, but also in the website, and as well as our newly launched NeuroNuggets. NeuroNuggets, like I said earlier, are short, practical guides that help you understand how your brain works and find ways to make work and life easier, also relationships. They're also for workplaces to help create more inclusive spaces created by neurodivergent people like Carrie, myself, and others with lived experiences. We'll send you a very short 2-minute feedback survey after this, and we would really appreciate it if you can fill this out for us. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Gary. Bye.